What is the meaning of life? This is, of course, a question which I think has been asked in probably millions of ways over the course of human life. Not only us in the modern day, it's a question that comes up a lot, but of course, throughout every single civilization and probably human mind has come across some form of this question, which we're going to be thinking through today. And so, as always, let's begin by thinking through the question that we have in the front of us. I think the key thing that is basically the hook of the question is the meaning of life. Or in other words, why are we here? Now, there's many different answers to this question, but I think the one I want to go through approaching is to ask the question in a little bit of a different way, which is, how could we have the best life possible? Now, I know that's somewhat of a bit of a jump, but I think when people are asking the question, what is the meaning of life? There's a few different sub-questions that can come from it, but I think the one that maybe is foremost among them is, how can I have the best life possible? Or how can anyone have the best life possible? And we can define that again in the moment, but when people ask, what is the meaning of life? I think sometimes it can come from a place of lack of meaning or a negative experience of the world. And so it might be a question of searching, because if you were given, let's say, the meaning of life, let's say they wrote it down for you and they handed you the meaning of life and you saw it, you would probably use that answer in your day-to-day to improve your life, I would say. You know, some people might just be satisfied with seeing, okay, yeah, that's it. But I think probably the vast majority, if not everyone, would take the meaning of the life answer, whatever it is, let's say, and they would then apply it to their life to make it better. They wouldn't apply it to make it worse. And so I think this is the foremost question, is how can you have the best life possible? And so then we can start unpacking that question. The best life possible. Well, okay, 3 words there, pretty important. Best generally means, or pretty much always means, it is the top of the options, which is going to be most beneficial to the scenario at hand. And so, of course, I think we generally all have a good view of that definition, but if we had 2 options, would it be better to, save 1,000 people or not? It would probably be better to save 1,000 people, given the fact that they're not, all evil. Let's say that they're all good people. It's generally going to be considered the right option to save 1,000 people. That is a better thing to do. So with regards to all the options you have, the best is the one that will lead to a better outcome. That's what I believe the best is. It's the maximal choice which will lead to a better outcome. And then life. So we're answering the question, best life possible, which is a sub-question of the main title of the video, or the lecture, in fact. We want the best life possible. So this doesn't just mean we want to have the best day today, or just the best week this week. It means the whole life, and this is a really key element, because you can do things today which will probably maximize the positive emotion that you feel. The problem with that is that, as I'm sure, hopefully we all generally know, the reason we're not doing this all day, every day, is because that would just make today a pretty interesting experience, let's say, with dopamine firing all over the place, etc. However, if you then woke up tomorrow after doing that, or even next week, or even trying to sustain that level of intake for even a month, which isn't very long, then you wouldn't feel very good. And we all generally know that, because, again, there's a reason not every human on Earth is doing these things. And that's why the key word here is we want the best life possible. So that means, and this is where it starts to lean into the true answer of today's lecture. If we want the best life possible, it means we not only want today to be pretty good, we also want tomorrow, we also want this week, we also want next week, we also want this month, we also want next month, we also want this year, and we want next year, and etc., decade and onwards, until you've built up the best life overall that you could possibly have. And possible just means that, it's got to be something you can actually move towards. This is something, the phrase best life possible, you could just say best life, but possible puts in there this idea that for each person there's a different step forward that you have to take, and you want to maximize the life that you're going to have. And so we've defined the question. We want the best. So if you laid out all the options that you could take as your next step, we want to take the best one, which will lead to the maximum positive emotion over your whole life. Not just for today, because again, I'm sure we've all binge watched Harry Potter or whatever show it might be in one day, and it feels pretty good. Obviously, I'm not saying not to watch films. Watching films is great, but that exact mode of being will not benefit you the next day, let's say. And so it's this idea of weighing up every single action that you take that will bring you to the best life overall. Now, of course, we'll get to the actionable state of it nearing the end of the video, but what is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is a sub-question to achieve the best life possible. Not only for you, of course, but for everyone else, even though I think they're the same thing. So, that is what you need to do. You need to sum up the options, okay, and then think about your overall life. Do something that is good for you today, good for everyone else tomorrow, good for everyone else in a week, good for you in a week, good for you in a month, good for everyone else in a month, etc., right? Because, of course, if you're benefiting other people as well, that is actually going to make your life better, as we know from studies and also probably experience. So, that brings us to the key idea, which is how to choose, or in other words, what options are the best to lead to the life we want. That's the sub-question then from there. And this is almost a story as old of time. And you can ask yourself this personally. If you think about a story which you admired or resonated with, let's say, even just think about your favourite film. It can be one of your top 5 favourite films, whatever. And if you think about the main character in that film, you can think about what they did. And now, what they did, what you admired about them, is probably better than nothing. So this is the key part of this extension, is that taking one step forward that is slightly in the wrong direction is still better than not moving forward at all. So you want to make sure that even if your aim is slightly off, even if you don't know exactly, let's say, the exact life you want to have, as long as you're moving forward in the right direction, that can help you correct your aim a few steps after that. And so this gets to the idea that, well, you must start walking in whatever particular direction you have a calling towards, let's say. And then each step of the way, you can ask yourself with true focus and presence in the moment, okay, is this moving towards what I would somewhat call the correct aim or the ideal life in that scenario? And if it is, then you can take a further step forward, maybe adjusting your direction a little bit more. And that is just something to keep in the back of your mind when you want to start improving your life, but you don't know where exactly to begin. You don't have to get exactly the right answer for the best life possible. So, for instance, some good examples would be, probably you're going to want to have a family, which means you're going to want to have a partner, which means you're going to have to become a person which is actually going to be the best partner possible, maybe. That's a good idea. And so you have to work on yourself. That might mean a multitude of things. It might mean going to do some exercise. It might mean eating healthier. It doesn't mean that you all have to eat exactly the same thing every day. It just means eating healthier. And so one person might eat blueberries, the other might eat strawberries. Either way, you're taking somewhat the right direction towards where you want to go. And so that's exactly the kind of thing I mean. And so this is where we bring everything together with essentially what I believe is the purpose of life that always leads to a mode of being that's so meaningful that the fact that life is suffering is no longer relevant. And this is the idea that each step that you take forward towards your ideal life is what I would call an action of voluntary self-sacrifice. So just like we defined earlier, whenever you are trying to think about your best life possible, that word life, of course, as we talked about, spans a very, very long time. And so what you have to do in order to have the best life possible is, yes, of course, enjoy the moment and the journey of what you're doing moving forward, but more importantly, to voluntarily self-sacrifice for the best possible thing over all time. Because essentially, it is a form of sacrifice, taking the example of eating healthy again, to eat strawberries as opposed to maybe you want a cookie in the moment. And again, I'm not saying to completely cut out cookies. It's just an example that if you ate cookies every day, that's not going to maximize your overall life enjoyment. It's not going to be the best option to overall life satisfaction for many reasons that I'm sure we could get into. But having strawberries or raspberries or whatever, or just eating any healthy food, whatever it might be, that is sacrifice. You might have a little bit of pain initially, let's say. And it's further shown in the example of exercising. You're voluntarily going through some suffering in the moment that will lead to outweighing benefits over tomorrow, the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year. And the amount of stuff you gain from just that little bit of self-sacrifice in the moment is far more than you would by not doing it, let's say, because you're not building towards anything. And so this, of course, idea of voluntary self-sacrifice is what I would call some sort of responsibility as well. You are responsible for yourself and someone else, other people in the world, which means that if something occurs, a situation perhaps, and you don't want to, carry on with your responsibility, you have to battle yourself to force yourself through whatever self-sacrifice it might be, so that you can indeed be responsible for whatever the scenario might be. And of course that is a story as old as time, as we mentioned earlier. Whatever your favourite film was, no doubt the protagonist had responsibility. And they upheld that. So, as would be the typical religious idea, pick up your cross and walk forward uphill.